Steve's the only one? How many 14-year-olds do we have here? Okay. I met my wife when I was 14. 8th grade biology class. I used to sit behind her and I would play with her hair. And then of course back at that time I had more hair. Maybe that's why, you know. But she was scared of me back then. I had hair down to here, and I had long sideburns come down to here. Mustache had a little gap right there. But she'd see me coming down the hallways. She would run as fast as she could run. And she'd run in the restroom and hide, and I would wait outside for her to come back out. And then I'd carry her books to class. And so today, I'd probably go to jail for what I did back then because I was stalking her. So her name used to be Beluch. So I went through all the Beluches in the telephone book. I said, is Diane there? Diane there. And finally somebody said, I know which Beluch you want. So I called her, and she said she had something to do and she wouldn't talk to me. Then finally in 10th grade is the first time that I got to touch her. And we were roller skating, and I tripped. And I got to reach down and pick her up. And that's the first time I touched her. And then we went out on the couple skate. So, I'll never forget that. Now, if you can think about anybody that you could walk with, if you can think about anybody that's died, passed away, or even in this life, if you could choose anybody that you would like to walk with, who would it be? You know, I look throughout history, I think it'd be kind of neat to be able to walk and talk with Abraham Lincoln. Don't you think that'd be kind of neat? I mean, if Abraham Lincoln just walked in here right now, how would you feel if you could walk hand in hand with Abraham Lincoln?
Tell him to give me 5.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Who would you guys want to walk with? There's somebody?
Churchill.
Churchill, okay, Winston Churchill, yeah, okay. Who? Who would you guys like to walk with? How about one of maybe a distant relative or somebody that's died and passed away? Huh? Yeah, God, wouldn't that be something? To be able to just think about, you know, this is what this is all about this weekend. You know, I can remember the first time I got to touch my wife and hold her hand and walk with her like it was just last night. I remember when we were in school and I watched her walk past me. And I had my friend, and I said to my friend, that's going to be my next girl. He says, oh yeah, Krause. Because Diane had this long hair, very beautiful. She was in the National Honor Society, made straight A's, and there was me just, you know, just having fun. But, you know, to be able to walk with her was a privilege because she was out of my league. And just to think, to be able to walk with God. Imagine, just think about that. To be able to walk with Him. Isn't that a great, wonderful privilege? I mean, you think of all the people that you could walk with. You know, my dad's passed away. I'd like to walk with my dad again. My mom. I think about some of these old-time preachers. Even some people that's been to this camp. Like Bill Covan. You all know Bill Covan? A great, great preacher. It'd be wonderful to be able to walk with him and all of that. But just think about how wonderful it is to be able to walk with God. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, so what we like to do this weekend is think about some thoughts about what we can do in walking with God and what does that all mean. Okay, so So here in 1 John chapter 1, the first 4 verses, he's talking about the privilege that John had. John actually got to see Jesus. He got to walk with Jesus. He got to talk to Jesus. He got to feel Jesus. He's actually got to see Jesus perform all those wonderful miracles. He actually was able to go up onto that great mountain and watch Jesus be transfigured. And hear that great voice that came out of heaven that said, "This is my Son. This is my Son. Hear ye Him." God was so proud of His Son that God could not contain Himself. "This is my Son. This is my boy. Hear ye Him." And what a wonderful opportunity that God has given to you and me, that we get to walk with His Son. Isn't that great? So John says, "I seen Him. I touched Him. I felt Him. I seen Him ascend into heaven." And that's the person that you and I get to walk with. And so when it says, "Walk in the light, as He is in the light." When He says, "Walk in the light," that light, what is that light? Now, just think about it. If I ask you to tell me, give me a description about who God is, what would you say? Who is God? If you could give a description about God, give me a word that describes who God is, what would you say? Who's God? One word.
Creator.
Huh?
Creator.
Creator. Okay.
Awesome.
What else?
Awesome.
Awesome. Okay.
Love.
Love. Okay, give me another one.
Father.
What is it?
Father.
Father. Okay. Give me another one.
Magnificent.
Okay. Magnificent.
She said caring.
Caring. Okay. Caring. Yeah. What's another one?
Infinite.
Infinite. Yeah. All of those are great. But guess what? John has outdone us all. Because when John describes Jesus, describes God, He is what? What is God in 1 John? What's Jesus in John chapter 1? Light. He is light. Okay, just think about light. Where does light go? It goes everywhere. Okay? And so, you think about what light can do. Isn't it nice to have light? You know, when John wrote this, there was no electricity. So, what happens when there's no electricity? And what happens when the sun goes down? What comes out when the sun goes down? Crime comes out, right? And you know, so back in the 1st century, they had to sleep with one eye open because there was darkness and there was crime. Now, there was a time in our country that there were a time when we didn't have a lot of electricity. And so at night, to save power, they would turn the street lights off. But what came out when the street lights went out? Crime. So to reduce the power, they end up producing more crime. And so we need light, because light exposes, right? What does light do? When you turn on a flashlight, what does it do? When you turn on the lights, what does it do? It reveals things, right? You can see things, right? And so then when those lights come on, what happens to the darkness? It goes away, right? Okay, think about when you're looking for something and you lose something. What do you have to find it? You got to have light, right? So you turn on the light. Remember in Luke chapter 15, a woman who lost the lost coin. What did she do to try to find her lost coin? She got the light out. And she began to look for that lost coin until she found it. The other thing is, light, what does it do to the darkness? What does light do to darkness? Can you have light and darkness in the same place? No. What happens to darkness when the lights come on? It goes away. It disappears. Okay, so sometimes people don't always behave like they should, right? And sometimes, you maybe have seen this when you see people that's maybe having an ungodly conversation. All of a sudden, the preacher approaches them, and what happens? All of a sudden, they change subjects, right? Why? Because maybe some light has come, right? And so what do? They kind of hide. I remember one time I went over to see a lady. The church, that was a widow and her daughter, and they needed a washer and a dryer. So the church was going to pay for them a washer and a dryer, so I went over to see them. So I'm sitting there, and I see smoke coming out of the couch. I said, "Your couch is on fire. Your couch is on fire." And what happened was, they were smoking. And they didn't want me to know that they were smoking. So they stuck the cigarettes underneath the couch and caught the couch on fire. So, but that's what light does, right? So it exposes things. It makes you see things. So that's what light does. So light is a good thing. I've been having a cold all week, so I hope you guys put up with me. But so think about what else does light do. What else does light do? Okay, it exposes. It makes the darkness vanish. What else does it do? Don't you like to see the morning come? Don't you like to see morning? Or don't you? Maybe you like to sleep in. But I like getting up in the morning. I like going out and listening to the birds sing. And usually that's when I do my Bible reading. It's a great time. Because that light brings warmth. It brings comfort. Just think about these disciples. These disciples of Jesus, they had been with him for 3 years, right? Okay. You remember in John chapter 14, a familiar verse that I know all of you know, where Jesus is talking about his death. And he says in John chapter 13, he's going to leave them. And they're thinking, Lord, you're going to leave us? What are we going to do if you leave us? And so Jesus says in John 14, he says, "Let not your hearts be troubled." When we live in a dark world, we become what? We become what? We become troubled, right? When bad things happen to us, bad things happen to our families, when we see our friends and things happen to them, we listen to the news, we see all this darkness. And what happens? When we go to bed at night, our hearts are troubled, right? But Jesus says, "Let not your hearts be troubled." So what does he say? He says, "You believe in God and believe also in me. For in my Father's house are many mansions, and if it were not so, I would have told you." And then he says, what am I going to do? He says, I go to prepare a place for you. That where I am, that you may be also. When he says I go, what does that mean? Some people think, well, he's up there building us a big mansion up in the sky. That's not what he's talking about. Jesus is saying, I'm going to the cross. And if I don't go to the cross, you can't go and be where I am. So I've got to go to the cross. I have to die so that you can be where I am. And then Thomas then asked that great question. Lord, how shall we know the way? Because now they've been with him for 3 years. And now they're going to be separated. And what does Jesus say? I am what? The way, the truth, and the life. No man goes unto the Father but by me. So he's going to leave him. Now, not only is he going to leave him, but he's got a big task that he's going to give him. He says in Matthew chapter 28, I want you to go into all the world. All the world. Now, who's he talking to? He's talking to a bunch of little disciples that were nothing but little fishermen who've hardly been out of the state of Ohio. And then he says to them, I want you to go to all the world. Now, how in the world are you going to go to all the world when you haven't been out of the state of Ohio? What kind of problems are you going to encounter if you're going to go to all the world? That means you got to go to Iraq. That means you got to go to Iran. That means you got to go to South America. You got to go to some of the most dangerous places in the world. What are you going to encounter? What problems are you going to face if you've never been out of the state of Ohio? What do you think? What's the number one barrier you're going to have? What is it? Language. I mean, how in the world am I going to be able to speak their language? Right? Language can be a major problem, right? Then, can you imagine being away from your parents? Being away from your family? What kind of security would you have? And so what's the assurance? This is the assurance that we have in walking in the light. What is assurance does God give those disciples? He says, Lo, I am what? With you how much? Always. Until when? Until the end of the world. So wherever you go, if you are walking with Christ and in Christ, who's with you all the time? Who's with you all the time? Jesus is. I can remember some time ago, I was down in Florida. And we were down in Fort Lauderdale, and I thought I'd take a walk out on the beach. It was about 5:30 in the morning before anybody got up. And I'd go out on the beach when nobody was there. And I remember I was walking down this beach, and this guy yells and screams at me. I just keep on walking. I come back. And like a dummy, I came back the same way I went. There he was. He looked like he had muscles bulging out in every direction. He looked like a guy that's been in prison for a long time. I mean, he was all ripped. And I'd try to step one way, he'd step over like this. I'd go that way, and he wasn't going to let me through. Now, if you had a guy that looked like he was about ready to mug you and had muscles bulging out in every direction, what would you do? What would you do? He's got you cornered. You can't run. You know what we used to do? We get then you get all shaky. You get hyperventilated, right? Isn't that what you do when you get scared? Right? Don't we get hyperventilated when we get scared? Yeah, that's what we do. You know what I was doing? I was getting hyperventilated too. And then I got to thinking. Matthew 28 and verse 20. Lo, I am with you always until the end of the world. If you walk in the light, as He is in the light. We have fellowship one with another. And we have fellowship with Him. And He doesn't leave me. So I got to thinking. If Jesus was standing right here, and you could actually see Him with your eyes, now, would you be scared of some muscle-bound guy standing on the beach that's trying to intimidate you when you have a person standing beside you that's bigger than the world? You tell me, would you be scared? No, we wouldn't be scared. So you know what? Guess what? I just calmed down, got completely relaxed. I said, hey, what's your name? I said, where are you staying at? Where are you from? I looked at him right in the eye. Then he got scared. And he started backing up. Because I think he thought I was a policeman, because he never, he didn't know people had him. But the thing about it is, if you walk in the light, as he's in the light, we have this assurance. And this is what John is telling us. We can have this wonderful assurance that you don't have anything to worry about, because he will be with you. And so what a wonderful privilege that is, right? That we can have him, and he will be with us. Now, in this world, there's a lot of uncertainties, right? And we can choose to walk in darkness, right? Because God will not make us walk in light. This walk that we're having with God, like Diane and I, when I started walking with her, you know what? I kept on walking with her. I never stopped walking with her. I never stopped talking to her. I would call her on the phone, and she would fall asleep, and I could hear her snoring through the receiver. I tried to wake her up, but she wouldn't wake up. But we kept on talking. And we kept on walking. And we built a relationship. And that's the way it is with Jesus. We got to keep walking. We got to keep talking. And we got to continue to walk in him. Because in the world that we live, there are lots of uncertainties. And in the world that we live, there is a lot of darkness. To take this walk, number one, you've got to have the same purpose that God has. If you are walking one way and God is walking another, you can't walk with him. Remember the story of Jonah? When God says, Jonah, I want you to go this way, and Jonah went the opposite way, right? Was he walking with God? No. So for me to walk with God, I got to walk according to his purpose. And what's his purpose for your life? What's our purpose? What do we live for? Ephesians chapter 3, very last verse. What we live for is to glorify and honor God. That's what our life is all about. We want to glorify and honor him. Now, so as we go through this life, we feel with all these uncertainties. And sometimes you might question whether you are even saved or not. And to be able to walk in this life, there are some conditions that God places upon us. And he wants us to meet those conditions. But he wants us to walk with him. He wants that fellowship. And like I said, life is filled with a lot of uncertainty. And you can choose to walk in darkness. I remember, it's probably been, it's been about 40 years ago. 40 years ago, I had a young guy. He was about 12 years old. 12, 13. I take him with me on Bible studies. I took him with me door knocking. I took him with me to lectureships. But I moved away and went to another place to preach. But he chose another way to walk. And he decided to turn to alcohol, tobacco, many other things. And here just about 2 months ago, I hadn't talked to him in 40 years. But he had a stroke. He's only 50 years old. And he's not going to come out. And he said to his mom, would you tell Larry to come down that I can talk to him? He made a decision to walk in darkness. And that darkness affected his life. Now, all of us need to look to make sure that we're walking in the light. Now, I have another friend of mine, I might not look like it, but I've been doing karate for about 30 years. But I had a friend of mine, him and I would do karate every Wednesday morning at 7:30 for the last 25 years. About 6 weeks ago, him and I were working out, and he's coughing. And he's coughing up blood. And I said to him, I said, are you taking blood thinners? Or maybe, he said, no, yeah, I am, Larry, but I don't think that's the problem. Now, this person, I talked to about 3 weeks earlier than that about being baptized into Christ. I talked to him about what baptism really is. That it's not a sprinkling, that it's an immersion. That it's making a commitment to Christ, and it's going into the blood of Jesus. And I explained all that, what it really meant. So he didn't take it too serious. And so, a week later, he calls me. He said, I'm going to have a checkup. And he found out that he has cancer all through his lung. So, he gets what he can swallow. I go down on a Wednesday to be with him. He asked me to come down. I go down. They put a feeding tube in. And then that Friday morning, he died. 2 weeks earlier than that, he was doing karate. He was a strong man. He was a 9th degree black belt. That's almost as high as you can go. But he died. And he died outside of Christ. He died not walking in the light. And so we got to make sure that we're all walking in the light. So he says, if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship one with another. Okay, and what's the problem that all of us have? What do we all have a problem with? Sin, okay? Because there's nobody that goes through life without messing up. Okay? Sometimes we mess up big time, and so we all have sin problems. When I was growing up, my dad was a good dad, sort of. My mom, I never heard my mom ever say a curse word in my life. My mom never ever tasted alcohol, never tasted tobacco. And the only person she was ever with was my dad. And they were married for 72 years. But my dad, my dad had a drinking problem. When he would get paid, he'd go to the bar. And my mom would have to go up and get him out of the bar. And they would fight. And I remember one time my mom trying to lock herself in the bathroom. My dad was trying to push himself in and cut my mom's foot. She had to go to the hospital. It was just terrible. But then, in 1969, my mom, my dad, all my brothers and sisters, we learned the gospel of Christ. And my dad came out of darkness, and he came into the light. He never again tasted any more alcohol, no more tobacco, and our home became a place of paradise. And you know why? Why was it a place of paradise? Who was there? Who cleaned up the house? Jesus came in and cleaned it up. And when Jesus comes into your house and he cleans it up, and you walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship one with another. And the blood of Christ, the blood of his Son, what does it do? It cleanses us from all of our sin. But then he says, if we say that we have no sin, what happens? We deceive ourselves and the truth is not in us. And we make him a liar. So we are going to sin. But there's a difference between saying whoops, right? You ever say whoops? Right? That's when you mess up, right? Whoops! I messed up there, right? Whoops! There's a difference between whoops and somebody purposely going down the wrong road. So we got to make sure that we continue walking the light and that we walk the way God walks. We see things the way God sees them. And that way we can have the blood of Jesus to continue to wash away our sins. So I don't think there's anything better than this theme that we have this weekend. And I'm looking forward to tomorrow. And we'll talk about more about our relationship with God, relationship with each other as we walk in the light. But maybe you're here this evening. And maybe you're somebody that, maybe, we all are in this thing together. And we're in the world, and we're battling this world, and sometimes we need each other's prayers. And maybe someone just needs to respond to the invitation of Christ. But if you need to respond in any way, all right, let's go ahead and we'll sing a song. If you need to come, you come, and we'll pray for you.